Intelligence Agency says, using the terminology of the trade, he's a controlled asset of Chinese intelligence. That needs to be laid bare. And the implications of it are so shocking that they need to be catalysts for, as I say, corrective action, which I believe in this case means removing a man from the kind of responsibilities that Joe Biden has currently, at the risk of otherwise having him continue to advance the interests of our enemy. And again, this is a matter of extreme urgency, I believe, because I think at the moment, not least because of the compromises of Joe Biden and others, the Chinese Communist Party seems poised to engage in the kind of old-fashioned warfare that they've been preparing for some time. We can't have people running our country compromised by the enemy in a shooting war, for heaven's sakes. I would simply say that if Kevin McCarthy becomes the Speaker, he must be held fully accountable for giving the authority to investigate where the facts lead to Mike Gallagher, who will be running this China Commission, to Jim Jordan, who will be the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, to Jamie Comer, who will be the chairman of the Oversight Committee, and anybody else in the Armed Services Committee or elsewhere, who will have the authority to investigate fully and correct this mortal peril that we currently face. Investigations are important, but they have to be rigorous. They have to be unencumbered by political considerations, and they need to lead to corrective action.
That's all. Manufactured before being imported from China. The Chinese regime has dismissed allegations of espionage as unfounded rumors. The device's discovery has prompted the UK government to review urgently security threats coming out of China. China's strict pandemic border controls have come to an end, has lifted mandatory quarantine rules for inbound travelers, and has allowed its citizens to go abroad. But as of Monday, flights are scarce, and several countries are requiring negative COVID tests for travelers from China, as a wave of infections is surging across the country. Matthew Larotonda reports.
These are the first Chinese tourists to arrive in Thailand on a direct flight from China in 3 years. 200 of them, a momentous occasion for them now that China's government has ended the strict COVID border controls that largely kept its citizens from traveling abroad since the start of the pandemic. China finally reopened on Sunday to jubilant scenes at airports. This is one of the tourists.
We are very excited to come back to Thailand. We are waiting for 3 years already. Before the COVID, we come here every year. And this time I take my family to come here.
Long lines in Beijing as people eagerly await to renew their passports. The government says it expects people to take 2 billion trips this season, but in these early days of reopening, it's only a trickle, not a flood. Not yet. Flight data shows that on Sunday there were 245 international flights coming and going from China. On the same day in 2019, there were over 2,500. Also, several countries are still cautious about how to deal with inbound Chinese travelers. The World Health Organization has accused the Chinese government of underreporting the ongoing COVID outbreak inside its borders that is overwhelming its hospitals and crematoriums, while Beijing has downplayed the severity. The United States has imposed mandatory negative COVID tests on travelers from China, as has the UK, Japan, Spain, and others. Taiwan said Monday that nearly 20% of recent arrivals from China have tested positive.
And illegal immigrants are close to any of the areas where they've been camped out for weeks. The White House told reporters that it was coincidental that there just happened to be no illegal immigrants at the service center when Biden visited. Meanwhile, videos showing camps being cleared out days before Biden's visit.
Meanwhile, some Democrats and immigration advocates are accusing Biden of implementing inhumane policies by expanding Title 42. The White House today defended Biden's trip, saying he's committed to treating every migrant as a human being, and that the trip, quote, helped him form a more vivid picture of what the administration has done and needs to do. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
We now turn to the turmoil in Brazil. The latest
at office. NTD's Iris Tao has the story, plus some revelations on what the papers may actually contain.
For a second day, still no answer from President Biden. Biden's under fire for classified documents discovered at Penn Biden Center, which is in the building right behind me. The documents were from Biden's time as vice president. They were found by Biden's personal lawyers just 6 days before the midterm elections. But the White House only admitted to it yesterday. The White House tells CNN that Biden was unaware what those documents were. The outlet is reporting today that they included 10 classified documents about Ukraine, Iran, and the UK, and some were labeled as top secret.
Where's the FBI raid?
Republicans and former President Trump are saying there's a double standard, since the FBI raided Trump's Mar-a-Lago home over classified documents.
Biden took classified documents with him and held them for years and criticized former President Trump. I wonder why the press isn't asking the same questions of him as vice president taking classified documents that they were asking President Trump.
And just 4 months ago, Biden said this about documents found at Trump's home.
How that could possibly happen, how anyone could be that irresponsible.
Democrats, meanwhile, are calling such criticism
Republican hypocrisy in its finest. What President Biden did was disclose this to the archives.
Meanwhile, an ethics watchdog group tells NTD the think tank involved here could have funding ties with China.
We have information that the University of Penn has received millions of dollars of Chinese money. We believe some of that went to the Biden Center. Who knows whether there's some documentation of these classified documents that do involve China. So it's really suspicious here, and this calls for a full investigation with subpoena power by the committees.
The Department of Justice is reviewing the found documents, and Republicans are now adding this matter to their growing list of investigations. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
Congressman Russ Fulcher, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on today.
There's news surfacing as we speak where President Biden right now is taking some heat because of the documents that were found in the Biden Penn Center for Diplomacy, which is actually ironically located in this building that we're in right now on the 6th floor. When it comes to taking donations and influence, if you will, from the CCP, how big of an issue do you think this is?
These are things that have been, let's face it, swept under the rug. Okay? There's been a very friendly media, very friendly bureaucracies. The intelligence community has been very friendly to the existing administration. And so we don't know what the details of these things are. Even the January 6th Commission was very one-sided. And so now, for the first time, we will get another look at these situations. What are in these documents? Was it appropriate? Was it not? Was there personal gain that came out of some of these things? Hunter Biden, the laptop, all of that. It's been pushed aside. And so I think, frankly, that's one of the things that drove the election outcome the way that it did. I was surprised it wasn't a little bit more of a swing, frankly, but the American people are asking questions just like you did. Is this legitimate? Is it not? What are you going to do about it? Now's our opportunity to do something about it.
So at the very least, when it comes to these documents being found, whether or not they're on the same level of what was found at Mar-a-Lago, there are concerns that there may be a double standard in the way that they are treated versus the former president.
I don't think there's any question about it. Once again, go back to the January 6th Commission. I mean, it was very one-sided. They started with a verdict, said, okay, now we're going to go substantiate our verdict. The Biden laptop, we know for a fact now, FBI knew about it before the election. and constrained information about that. We now know, thank you, Elon Musk, that that people were suppressed trying to expose that. And so, with all these ingredients coming to light, of course, there's a double standard. I mean, we felt that here on the Republican side, media-wise, access to information-wise, restrictions on how we communicate and censorship with some of our communications versus some of our colleagues on the Democrat side. The double standard is no secret, at least to me and to our colleagues on the Republican side.
Congressman, I want to ask you about the rules package that was negotiated by members of the House Freedom Caucus with Kevin McCarthy. Some, when the vote came last night, said that it potentially might not go through because they thought McCarthy maybe gave away too much. In the end, it did. What are your thoughts?
It's interesting because I think we've been conditioned to the Nancy Pelosi way of doing business, which is a very heavy-handed speaker. And the rules that she had with the support of her conference were very empowering to the speaker and, quite frankly, minimizing to most members of Congress. Even from what I understand, under Speaker Boehner, it was a lot more control in the speaker's gavel. But with these new rules, it kind of goes back to what it was even pre-Boehner as speaker. And, frankly, I think that's just a good thing because each member has a little bit more ability to maneuver, has a little bit more say in terms of amendments, the actions on the floor, a little bit more notice when we get bills that we want to go through, especially big ones. Overall, I think is a very good thing, and we'll get used to that, I think, real quick.
Well, their emissions. The U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission says that gas stoves could be causing indoor pollution and link it to asthma in children. And federal officials for the agency say they plan to take action. That would mean adding gas emission standards to gas stoves or even banning them. The Association of Home Appliance Manufacturers replied saying a ban on gas stoves would not address the overall issue. They point to improving ventilation as a better option. The Department of Transportation says it has received thousands of complaints related to Southwest Airlines. The airline canceled more than 16,000 flights last month when difficult weather conditions hit nationwide.
Move due to cancer or other complications. With Actolife, premature births and C-sections will be a thing of the past. Actolife is designed to help countries that are suffering from severe population decline, including Japan, Bulgaria, South Korea, and many others. The facility features 75 highly equipped labs. Each state-of-the-art lab can accommodate up to 400 growth pods or artificial wombs. Every pod is designed to replicate the exact conditions that exist inside the mother's uterus. A single building can incubate up to 30,000 lab-grown babies per year. Actolife allows your baby to develop in an infection-free environment. The pods are made of materials that prevent germs from sticking to their surfaces. Every growth pod features sensors that can monitor your baby's vital signs, including heartbeat, temperature, blood pressure, breathing rate, and oxygen saturation.
Definition. So that's the best I can do in terms of giving it a coherent description.
I watched Matt Walsh's "What Is a Woman." It was good. I was impressed by it, and he hit on something really interesting. Whereas he got people to say, "Well, if you believe that a man can transition to a woman, then what is a woman?" Mm-hmm. And they're like, "Well, it's whatever you want." People are like, "Well, you're transitioning to it. So what is it that you are transitioning to?" And then people finally approach it, and they're like, "Wait a second. That there has to be a definition of what a woman is or what a man is if you can transition to it, regardless of whether you believe in trans." I mean, how would you describe this question he kind of raises in terms of what they actually believe?
The great thing about Matt Walsh's question is that it distills the fundamental incoherency of the movement. Because on the one hand, to say trans woman is a woman is to imply that a woman is something and that it's also somehow different from a trans woman.
Or from a man.
Yes,
in
or a man.
Or from a trans woman.
Trans woman terms, right, is a man that is transitioning to be a woman. And this is the kind of fundamental incoherence, is that the truth of the matter is, even to describe the movement, even the term trans implies a sexual binary initially, that you could move from male to female. But now even the category of trans is in some ways obsolete, because we have asexual, agender, non-binary, which denies that there's a binary at all. It just says, like, gender's on a spectrum. But if gender's on a spectrum, everyone's non-binary, because there's no binary. And so you don't have to scratch this very long if you look at it